Namo Bhagavate Narayana Namaskritya Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. So continuing with the discussion on Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 2, contents of the Gita summarized, text 67 onwards. So Krishna explained last time, for one who a transcendentalist can, one who is not connected with the Supreme can have neither transcendental intelligence nor a steady mind, without which there is no possibility of peace. And how can there be any happiness without peace? So steady mind, that is very, very important. And one who has a steady mind, when the mind is engaged in the service of Krishna, then only one can have. And then only one can hope to have control over the senses. Senses, how difficult it is to control the senses, it is mentioned next verse. Indriyanam hi charatam yanmano anuvidhiyate tadasya harati pragyam vayur navam ivambhasi. As a strong wind sweeps away a boat on the water, even one of the roaming senses on which the mind focuses can carry away a man's intelligence. That's how strong the senses are. And then the mind, which is not in control. Unless all of the senses are engaged in the service of the Lord, even one of them engaged in sense gratification can deviate the devotee from the path of transcendental advancement. As mentioned in the life of Maharaj Amrish, all of the senses must be engaged in Krishna consciousness. So that is the correct technique for controlling the mind. See, and why the example of boat is given. A boat on the water is swept away by a strong wind because boat is not anchored. The foundation or the hookup is shaky. So we have to anchor our mind at the lotus feet of Krishna. Even then, because of our sanskaras means impressions in the consciousness from so many lifetimes. Impressions come from what we do, what do we associate with, and then whatever desires are there, desires are all kept in the mind. One desire or other, sooner or later, it just starts coming up, popping up. And then now when we are living in this material body, in this lifetime, more desires are there. And the senses will go towards those. And another aspect of the senses and the mind is, it always, until it is practiced, invariably, it will go down to the baser desires. Desires for baser sense gratification, lower and lower. To keep it up, to keep the mind up, to keep the senses, desires, and the taste up, as Krishna says in earlier verse, give it a higher taste. We have to continuously give the senses, give the mind a higher taste. Then there is some hope. Some hope. Again, there are chances, as it is said, even one of the roaming senses on which the mind focuses can carry away a man's intelligence. So difficult. It's not that easy. Any yoga process, Bhati Yoga, Jnana Yoga, those yogic processes, there is no positive engagement for the senses. Bhakti yoga, there is positive engagement, and still there are chances. The senses will go here or there. And then fall down is bound to happen. But at least, as Krishna has said, that even a little progress on this path it can save one from the greatest type of danger. And greatest danger for us, well, death, everybody is going to die. That's not the greatest danger. Of course, we think this is the most dangerous thing, but we are all going to die. The most dangerous thing, according to scriptures, is not going to go down in the lower species of life. At least if we have made some progress, we can start over from that point on, because whatever progress is there is eternal. The spiritual progress is eternal. So we start over from there. But again, the sense is so difficult, especially these days. There's so many distractions in our hand: mobile phone, laptops. When you're driving the car, so many distractions. At least here in America, we don't see all the hoardings. In India, if you go, there are hoardings everywhere, nonsense hoardings. You cannot unsee them. They are there right in your face, huge pictures. What to do? So the practice, continuous daily practices are given to elevate our mind and at least not to let it fall down. Otherwise, this verse is very, very important. And then what happens? And then what Krishna is saying is, Tasmadyasya mahabahu nikrihitani sarvisha indriyani indriyartheyabhyas tasya pragya pratishtitaha. Therefore, O mighty aunt, Arjun, one whose senses are restrained from their objects is certainly of steady intelligence. That's how the restraint has to be there. One can curb the forces of sense gratification only by means of Krishna consciousness, or engaging all the senses in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. As enemies are curbed by superior force, the senses can similarly be curbed, not by any human endeavor, but only by keeping them engaged in the service of the Lord. One who has understood this, that only by Krishna consciousness is one really established in intelligence, and that one should practice this art under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, is called sadhak, or a suitable candidate for liberation. So this is what our situation is. We are not siddhas, we are not perfect, we are sadhakas. We are trying to control, or practicing. And another thing is, in this process, in this lifetime, we are practicing, but we don't know how the other person, to what extent he has practiced in the last lifetime, because somehow we have come in this process this lifetime together. But everybody must have done something last lifetime, and everybody has a different pace or speed of practice, even in this lifetime. So everybody is on a different platform. So all we have to do is help each other. That's the whole idea. Help each other to make progress. We all are fallen souls. That's for sure. That's why we are here. We just have to help each other. So restrain our senses. And as Prabhupada has mentioned previous words, restraining is only possible by engaging them in higher taste. As Amrish Maharaj's example is given. So even though he was a king, but he had engaged all his senses in the service of the Lord. Eyes in looking at the deities, nose in smelling the incense and flowers offered to the deity, ears in hearing about the Lord, chanting and hearing his chanting or glories. Mouth has two functions. The tongue has two functions: to talk and to taste. So to talk about the Lord, to taste the prasadam that is offered to the Lord. Legs in going to the temple of the Lord. And his own body, it is mentioned in touching the other devotees. And what does it mean in touching? So touching means in serving the other devotees of the Lord. If we constantly do that, then there is some hope. Still, the senses and the mind is very, very strong. But still there is some hope that mind and senses will be controlled. Because bhakti process is Rishikena, Rishikesha, Sevanam Bhakti Ruchyate. Rishikena means all our senses, engaging them in the service of Rishikesh. Rishikesh means Krishna. Rishika means senses, Isha means the controller. So actual controller is Krishna. Even our bodies, senses, our actual controller is Krishna. So that is bhakti. So we all have to make proper, sincere, determined endeavors on this path. Then there is some chance. In fact, senses, this was once Akbar asked this question to Birbal, that at what stage in a human's life he doesn't even go after sense gratification. Birbal said, I'll answer you in a few days. So after a few days, there was one old minister of Akbar's regiment. He was very old and he was about to die. And Birbal said, Maharaj, let's go see him. He is about to leave the body and you should go because he has served you for such a long time. He said, okay. And Birbal said, take your daughter also with you. Akbar said, what are you talking? Why take my daughter? Why engage her in? He said, just take the old man. I mean, he might give some words of wisdom to your daughter. So Akbar said, okay. So they both went. And this old man, really, really old, just like maybe in our case, 80, 90, or maybe older than that. And he was on deathbed. Akbar Maharaj went, and Birbal was there, and Akbar's daughter was there, and other generals were there. And Akbar was asking him, oh, how is he feeling? But that old man, even on the deathbed, Akbar is there, and other important figures were there. He was, time to time, he was looking at Akbar's daughter. He was looking at Akbar's daughter. So when they came out, that's what Birbal said. This desire for sense gratification his body was old. So body could not function, but mind was still looking at your daughter to enjoy her. This is our condition. And this, as Krishna explains in the 8th chapter, the consciousness at the time of death decides what kind of body we are going to get next. And consciousness at the time of death is not just a passing consciousness, a passing thought. Whatever consciousness we have developed throughout our lifetime, that will decide the consciousness we have at the time of death. And that's how we'll get the next life. So that is why practice has to be there. Because how many of us can for sure say, I'm not going to die today? How many of us can say with surety? No guarantee. Even there was messages on the internet, Facebook, everywhere. This good comedian, Raju Srivastava, he was doing his exercise, jogging. And he fell down, heart attack, and then he died. Young guy. Where is the guarantee? And this very great investor, Jhunjhunwala in Bombay, he also died. He had made billions and billions of rupees. He also died. Just like that. Money could not save him. He had so much of money. From stock market and from other places, he had earned so much of money. Could not save him. So where is a guarantee that we are not going to die today? There is no guarantee. In our school time, we used to have exams. So, but then there was a schedule was given. Okay, this day, this time, math test will be there. We just knew everything schedule, but and we knew where it is going to be, because sometimes board exams we go to have a different center. But we just didn't know the questions. So we had to prepare for that exam so much. In this lifetime, in our lifetime, we don't know when is going to be the final exam, what time, what day, and where. What is the center? We don't know. But we know the final question of this exam, which is if we remembered Krishna or not. That's all. So how prepared we should be for this exam? How much preparation we used to do for our 10th or 12th exams? How prepared we should be for this exam? And that is only possible every day. We have to practice. Sometimes then people say, what do you mean? We don't take care of our families or children and jobs or house or relatives. We take care of everybody. Yeah, the responsibility is given to us by Krishna. So we have to take care of them. But at the same time, if we chant in the morning our rounds, we say minimum 16 rounds, read some books, hear something every day, do some physical service. But while doing all other activities, we can, at least in our thoughts, we can think of whatever we have heard in the morning, whatever we read in the morning, and we can always chant in the mind. Nobody can stop us from chanting Hare Krishna mantra or any other mantra. If somebody wants to chant something else, Lord Jagannath or something, why not? And more we study Bhagavad Gita actually is the essence of all the scriptures. Krishna himself is speaking and he has given the essence. So more we study, then we'll see how Krishna is in everything and how to see Krishna in everything. It teaches us. Why? Just to have our consciousness fixed properly. That's all. But it has to be, we have to be reminded of this again and again because we forget. We are people of such low consciousness. We forget. That's okay. That's why Krishna comes. Krishna performs his wonderful pastimes so that we can think of those. And now we can watch any of pastimes on YouTube. Little Krishna every day we can watch it. Or he gives his scriptures, Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam he has given. We can read, we can think, we can visualize Krishna. That is the whole idea. That's how we control our senses. Slowly, slowly, slowly. It's not possible all of a sudden to control everything. Because mind, the other day I gave example of Nanakji. He used to say the sitar, the strings of sitar, don't make them too tight, they will break, and don't leave them too loose, there will be no sound. It's same thing with the mind. Don't make it too tight. It will, just like a horse, it will just rebound. And if we let go of the horse, then it will go wherever it wants. So mind is like that. Sometimes you have to restrain it, sometimes you have to let it go to completely bring him under control. So some ideas of how to practice, but nevertheless, idea is to control the mind and the senses. That's the whole idea. Text 69. Ya nisha sarva bhutana tasyam jagrati samyami yasyam jagrati bhutani sa nisha pashato mune. Again, it's spoken in some allegorical statement. What is night for all beings is a time of awakening for the self-controlled. And the time of awakening for all beings is night for the introspective sage. So it doesn't go with exactly the nighttime and daytime. Let's see what in the Purport Prabhupada says. There are two classes of intelligent men. One is intelligent in material activities for sense gratification, and the other is introspective and awake to the cultivation of self-realization. Activities of the introspective sage, a thoughtful man, are night for persons materially absorbed, because they're not interested in things that an introspective sage or one who's trying to be self-realized, they're not interested in what these guys do. Just like, when I was in Dallas, I used to live about 45 minutes away from the temple. So we used to go on Saturday morning for Mangalarti and morning program. So 4:30, the darshan opens, so would start at 3:30, 3:45, something like that, from home. And our temple there is close to downtown Dallas. So when we go from downtown, we used to see so many cars coming out of downtown Dallas. And we would think, why so early on Saturday when it's a holiday? But the point was there were so many clubs and pubs in that area. So people would be drinking and whatever enjoyment we used to, then we can call it, they would be leaving the clubs at that time, 4:30 in the morning, 4:15 in the morning. And we would be going to the temple at that. So this is also an example of what is night for all beings is a time for awakening for the self-control. Of course, I'm not saying we were self-controlled, but we were trying. So they are not interested in what sadhakas do. The introspective sage remains alert in the night of the materialistic man, because now after leaving the clubs or pubs, they'll go home and sleep, and their devotees will start Mangalarti and then chant and then hear Bhagavatam class and do other spiritual activities. The sage feels transcendental pleasure in the gradual advancement of spiritual culture, whereas the man in materialistic activities, being asleep to self-realization, dreams of varieties of sense pleasure, feeling sometimes happy and sometimes distressed in a sleeping condition. So this is the materialistic's life. They don't care for self-realization. Asleep to that means completely ignorant of that, and only want sense pleasure. And in the process, sometimes he's happy when he gets the sense pleasure, and sometimes he's distressed when he doesn't get enough pleasure. The introspective man is always indifferent to materialistic happiness and distress. And this is what Krishna has said earlier also. Be of a steady mind. Loss, victory or loss, honor, dishonor, be steady. Control, tolerate it. He goes on with the self-realization activities undisturbed by material reactions. So whatever reactions, whether it's coming from his own karma or whether it's coming because Krishna wants to purify him, he is undaunted. He's not disturbed. He goes on with his spiritual activities. That's a man of steady intelligence. Further, Krishna says, Apure manam achal pratishtham samudram apah pravishanti yadat tadvat kamayam pravishanti sarve sa shantim apnoti na kama kami. Very, very important words. A person who's not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires. So desires will always be there, but we don't get disturbed by them. We don't try to fulfill them. Incessant, unstopped, complete, always, continuous. That enters like rivers into the ocean. So example is given like when the rivers enter into the ocean, which is ever being filled out, but is always still. So this is the quality of ocean. All the rivers dump their water in the ocean. The ocean is always steady, is always still. It doesn't think, okay, this river Ganges is coming, or this river is coming, and I should become full and cross my shores. No, it doesn't do that. Can alone achieve peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires. So satisfaction of desire is not possible, cannot happen. And once we try to satisfy, they become greed, because more and more desires will come. So one has to control, always control. Purport. Although the vast ocean is always filled with water, it's always, especially during the rainy season, being filled with much more water. But the ocean remains the same, steady. It's not agitated. Nor does it cross beyond the limits of its spring. That's also true of a person fixed in Krishna consciousness. As long as one has a material body, the demands of the body for sense gratification will continue. All demands will always be there. The devotee, however, is not disturbed by such desires because of his fullness. So this was a spiritual culture. It still is, but this was what India is based on. Spiritual culture. But now, because of so many years under Muslim rule and then under British rule, and now actually we are still living under Western rule because of this competition, material competition, technology, and this and that. It has steeped in so much that we have forgot our spiritual culture. Completely forgot. It takes so much time. Of course, spirituality among Indians is right there. We just have to scratch a little bit and it's right there. But in general, youngsters completely forgot. And older generation like us, now we consider ourselves old, we never learned it properly, like properly teachings and like Prabhupada has done, given the books, the courses are there. We never learned it, so we didn't give it to our kids, and they are lost. But the spiritual culture was the basis of India. There's a backbone. So India is a spiritual cradle of the whole world. And that's how it continued. The Sanatan Dharma. Sanatan means eternal. No beginning, no end. It continued in its fullness. So sometimes then people say, oh, how come we came under the control of Muslims and British? Well, the example is given, if a careless man's property is taken over by a shameless man, who is to blame? So we were careless about our spiritual culture. We means the Indians who were the kings and whoever was ruling over different parts of India. They were careless. And then the shameless people came, they took over. So we have to bring this back, because this spiritual culture is the only thing that is going to give peace to the mind. Otherwise, one desire after another, and we run after all these desires to fulfill those desires. Where will be the question of peace? And that's why Krishna says earlier, there is no question of happiness without peace. One cannot be happy without being peaceful. And this is how one becomes peaceful. Control. The devotee, however, is not disturbed by such desires because of his fullness. A Krishna conscious man is not in need of anything because the Lord fulfills all his material necessities. Lord fulfills. Krishna himself says, Yoga Kshema Mahamyaham. He is telling Arjuna. Arjuna had everything. They were going to fight for this war, after which they're going to control the whole world. But this is what Krishna is telling through Arjuna to all the devotees. I fulfill your desires. Do not worry. Therefore, he is like the ocean, always full in himself. Desires may come to him like the waters of the rivers that flow into the ocean, but he is steady in his activities, and he is not even slightly disturbed by desires for sense gratification. That is a proof of a Krishna conscious man, one who has lost all inclinations for material sense gratification, although the desires are present. So no inclinations. He doesn't want to go for any material sense gratification. Desires might be there. We cannot get rid of desires. He doesn't go after them. Because he remains satisfied in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, he can remain steady like the ocean and therefore enjoy full peace. Not just peace, enjoys happiness. It can only come from within, not from without, not from outside. Others, however, who want to fulfill desires, even up to the limit of liberation, what to speak of material success, can never attain peace. Material success can never attain peace. No matter how much we make materially, if we are not spiritually advanced, the greed will increase. Made $1 million, then we want to make 2 million, 10 million, 100 million. There is no end to it. But we are all running after it. The fruitive workers, the salvationists, and also the yogis who are after mystic powers are all unhappy because of unfulfilled desires. But the person in Krishna consciousness is happy in the service of the Lord, and he has no desires to be fulfilled. In fact, once a journalist was asking Prabhupada, what's the difference between you and all? Prabhupada said, we don't have any desires to be fulfilled. So one devotee was standing nearby. He said, what Swamiji means is we have no material desires. Prabhupada said, no, stop them. No desires means no spiritual desires either. Our only desire is to serve Krishna. Whatever Krishna wants, we take it. Because if we have so-called spiritual desires, that I want to serve Krishna this way, I want to dress him in this way, I want to feed him this way, and Krishna has something else in his mind, or Krishna wants to teach a devotee a lesson, whatever he wants to do, then the devotee will be disturbed. So we have no desires. All we have to do is find out what Krishna wants and do it. That's it. And if we're doing it, it doesn't give the desired results. Again, the desire is there. We should understand this is how Krishna is not desiring. Like Prabhupada, he was in LA at that time, and in early 70s. LA was nice, big temple ISKCON had, and Prabhupada had made it the headquarters of the Western world of ISKCON. And then the situations were becoming like Prabhupada had to leave everything and go to India. Somehow the situations were like that. And Prabhupada went in front of Rukmini Dwarkadhish, those are the deities in LA temple. And he said, I don't know, what do you want? Why you want me to leave here and go back to India? I don't know. But I'll do whatever you want. So then he went back to India. Then he established ISKCON in India, first Bombay and then Vrindavan, Mayapur temples. And then after a few years, Prabhupada was standing in front of deities, I don't know, in Mayapur or Vrindavan. Then he said, well, now I understand why you wanted me to come back to India. You wanted me to establish ISKCON here. So if somebody who was a neophyte, then he would have been disturbed. Oh no, I want to be here. But Krishna wants us to be somewhere else. We do it. So not getting disturbed. In fact, he does not even desire liberation from the so-called material bondage. The devotees of Krishna have no material desires, and therefore they are in perfect peace. No material desires. It doesn't mean we don't. If we are working and there is a chance for getting promotion, we don't go for it. We should go for it. But if we don't get the promotion, we should not get disturbed. Simple as that. Okay, whatever Krishna wants. It takes long time. It takes lots of practice and faith in Krishna. And how Krishna takes care of devotees, that's a different story. And that's something that we have to understand, that maybe we were crying for some broken pieces of glass, and Krishna had some nice gem for us in mind to be given later. So our desires are like that. We ask for broken pieces of glass. Like maybe Krishna has something much better in his mind to be given later. So just go with what Krishna wants. And in fact, that is always going to happen anyway. Whether we get disturbed, whether we cry, what happens. It's going to happen whatever he wants. Vihai kamanya sarvan kuma sharati nispriha nirmamo nirahankara sashanti madhigacchati. A person who has given up all desires for sense gratification, who lives free from desires, who has given up all sense of proprietorship and is devoid of false ego, he alone can attain real peace. That's the only way to attain peace. Given up all desires for sense gratification, lives free from desires, who has given up all sense of proprietorship. Means it doesn't mean one cannot own a house. It just he knows actual owner is Krishna, not me, and is devoid of false ego. False ego means I'm this body, I'm Indian, I'm man, I'm woman, I'm this, I'm that, I'm rich, I'm poor. That's all false ego. Soul is neither of these, none of these. He alone can attain real peace. Prabhupada says, to become desireless means not to desire anything for sense gratification. In other words, a desire for becoming Krishna conscious is actually desirelessness. To understand one's actual position as an eternal servitor of Krishna without falsely claiming this material body to be oneself and without falsely claiming proprietorship over anything in the world is a perfect stage of Krishna consciousness. One who is situated in this perfect stage knows that because Krishna is a proprietor of everything, everything must be used for the satisfaction of Krishna. Arjun did not want to fight for his own sense satisfaction, but when he became fully Krishna conscious, he fought because Krishna wanted him to fight. For himself, there was no desire to fight, but for Krishna, the same Arjun fought to his best ability. Real desirelessness is desire for the satisfaction of Krishna, not an artificial attempt to abolish desires. The living entity cannot be desireless or senseless, but it does have to change the quality of the desires. A materially desireless person certainly knows that everything belongs to Krishna, and therefore he does not falsely claim proprietorship over anything. The transcendental knowledge is based on self-realization, namely knowing perfectly well that every living entity is an eternal part and parcel of Krishna in spiritual identity, and that the eternal position of the living entity is therefore never on the level of Krishna or greater than him. This understanding of Krishna consciousness is a basic principle of real peace. So no material desire for ourselves, only desire of service of Krishna, but no sense of proprietorship as well. Even in service of Krishna, if I start thinking this belongs to me and I am this and that, then he will not attain peace. And sometimes those people, because we are conditioned souls, that is for sure, and we want to fulfill our desires, and then we start making excuses. So I am making this money, this much money, so that I can serve Krishna. No. that is to satisfy our own desires, actually. If we have to serve Krishna, we serve him. And if Krishna wants to bring money through us, he will bring, as Prabhupada said, all these temples of ISKCON, they are controlled by Srimati Radharani. Who are we, actually? We just have to be purified in our consciousness, and then Radharani can supply unlimited amounts of money. What's so difficult for her? She is the source of all the Lakshmis. All the Lakshmis are expansions of Radharani. But we don't understand this point. And then we think we are doing something for Krishna. No. Somehow Krishna is engaging us in his service. That's all. Krishna is not devoid of anything. He is full of all opulence, full. It's not like he has more opulence, most opulence than anybody. No, he is full, completely full. We need to serve him for our purification, not to help Krishna in any way. But that ego has to go away. And now the last verse of this chapter. So finally, Esha Brahmi Sthiti Partha Nainam Prapya Vimuyati Sthitvasyam Antakalepi Brahma Nirvanam Richati. That is the way of the spiritual and godly life, after attaining which a man is not bewildered. If one is thus situated, even at the hour of death, one can enter into the kingdom of God. Thus situated means fully in Krishna consciousness. One can attain Krishna consciousness or divine life at once, within a second, or one may not attain such a state of life even after millions of births. It's only a matter of understanding, accepting the fact. Maharaj Khatwang attained this stage of life just a few minutes before his death by surrendering unto Krishna. Nirvana means ending the process of materialistic life. Nirvana doesn't mean merging in Brahma Jyoti, because materialistic life ending is nirvana. So a devotee actually works after the stage of nirvana. He is always mukta. Moksha is there because he has finished materialistic life, or he's on the path of finishing materialist life because he has started his spiritual life. According to Buddhist philosophy, there's only void after the completion of this material life. But Bhagavad Gita teaches differently. Actual life begins after the completion of this material life. For the gross materialist, it's sufficient to know that one has to end this materialistic way of life. But for persons who are spiritually advanced, there is another life after this materialistic life. Before ending this life, if one fortunately becomes Krishna conscious, he at once attains the stage of Brahma Nirvana. So even while living in this material body, we can end this material life. Means if we end the material consciousness, there is no difference between the kingdom of God and the devotional life service of Lord. Since both of them are on the absolute plane, to be engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord is to have attained the spiritual kingdom. In the material world, there are activities of sense gratification, whereas in the spiritual world, there are activities of Krishna consciousness. Attainment of Krishna consciousness, even during this life, is immediate attainment of Brahman. And one who is situated in Krishna consciousness has certainly already entered into the kingdom of God. So that's why Prabhupada named the society as International Society for Krishna Consciousness, not Krishna activities or anything else. Even while living in this body, we purify our consciousness, means we have attained Krishna. Then our activities will be spiritual, our thought process will be spiritual, our dealings will be spiritual, means we are already spiritual. Simple as that. The body is material, or it look like a material body, although it can be spiritual. It might be spiritual. For example, if we keep an iron rod in fire for long enough, and when we take it out, it is red hot iron rod. It's non-different from fire, although it looks like iron rod. The shape will be of iron rod, but it will be non-different from fire. Wherever we touch that rod, it will burn. So similarly, while living in this body, if we purify our consciousness to such level that we are completely spiritually inclined, spiritual activities are there, then this body might look material. It might have the shape of a material body, but it will be completely spiritual. The subtle body, the gross body is what we see. Subtle body, mind, intelligence, false ego, we don't see why it's there. But they all become spiritualized. Or another way of understanding is the soul, as we read, the soul size is 1/10,000th part of the tip of the hair in material bodies. But suppose we have, we have come from spiritual world, and suppose we can suppose this, that in spiritual world, our form was of a peacock. Now we have fallen. Now in the spiritual world, there is no difference between the body and the soul. It's all same. Sachidananda Vigraha. Krishna is Sachidananda, and everybody in the spiritual world is Sachidananda. And the peacock has its shape, has its size also. Just like Krishna is a human, in the form of a human being, just like you see in the background. So to help him, to serve him in different pastimes, everybody has its own form, size, shape, everything is there. So that soul, which is the spiritual personality of peacock, he falls down in the material world. Then the size becomes 1/10,000th part of the tip of the hair. But the shape remains the same, because the shape is his relationship with Krishna. And through that shape, he enjoys that relationship with Krishna. The shape is eternal. It can be changed because it's not static, but generally we don't want to change. Because every soul is complete, full in his service, in his relationship with Krishna. There were so many varieties in spiritual world also. So the soul shape remains the same. Size becomes smaller. And then the now shape might be of peacock, but the consciousness could be of a man. So a human being. So he takes the form of a human being, but the soul's shape and the soul's relationship with Krishna remains the same. The consciousness is material which covers over that consciousness of peacock. So when we engaged in the service, in this yoga process, in the service of Krishna, then our spiritual body, it starts developing. It starts becoming bigger and bigger, coming to its full size. Of course, we cannot see the spiritual body. It's not like, as a peacock, my feathers are going to start growing out of this body. Spiritually, it might be, but gross body remains whatever gross body we have. So this is what happens. Then the spiritual body starts increasing, and material body, the material properties of the body starts going away of this gross body. And when we are completely spiritualized, then when we leave the body, we go back. And this is what it is said. Attainment of Krishna consciousness, or and then in the spiritual world there are activities. But so we start performing those activities, we start purifying our consciousness in this lifetime. And actually, also, if you look materially, in this lifetime, whatever consciousness we develop now, that is the body we're going to get next. So if we are developing consciousness of a tiger, tiger means God likes to kill and he likes to eat meat. We are developing that consciousness, means the next body is generating now, because the consciousness is being transformed into the consciousness of a tiger now. So next life is when we leave this body, because the consciousness is that takes a subtle body, and then subtle body takes the form of a tiger, and then we get a gross body, which is to cover the subtle body. And then gross body, it's made of same earth, water, fire, air, ether, but in the shape of a tiger. Why? Because the consciousness that we developed while living in this body. So we just have to do our activities so that we develop the consciousness, we develop our spiritual consciousness back, revive our dormant spiritual consciousness. And that's only possible by practice of sadhana bhakti. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has summarized this second chapter of Bhagavad Gita as being the contents of the whole text. So that's why it's contents of the Gita summarized. That's the title. In the Bhagavad Gita, the subject matters are Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. In the second chapter, Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga have been clearly discussed, and a glimpse of Bhakti Yoga has also been given. So glimpses how work in Krishna consciousness, develop spiritual consciousness. More details will be given later. So thus we end this second chapter. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport to second chapter of Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of its contents. So we'll stop here. See anybody has any questions or comments.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Very good class, Prabhuji. Mataji wants to say something. Mataji, go ahead.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, thank you. This question comes from my children all the time. I think I should ask this also because I don't know the answer either. Like you said, if Krishna wants us to be desireless, why in the first place he gives us the desire?
See, desireless, Prabhupada explained, it means no material desires. And material desires we develop when we fall in the material world. When the soul first time falls in the material world, now material world is what? Material desires is what? To enjoy our material senses, right? Knowledge acquiring working senses, 10 senses, and the mind. Now, all these desires spiritually were there in the spiritual world. It's not like whatever is in the material world has to have origin in the spiritual world. So in the spiritual world, eyes want to see something beautiful, so they see Krishna or associates of Krishna. Here, eyes want to see something beautiful, and we see, look at opposite sex, we go watch movies, we do this, that. So material desires, spiritual desires. Spiritual desires are there, but that is there for service of Krishna, nothing else. Is that okay?
Yeah, how to explain the kids? They don't, how to make them feel the love for spiritual desire.
So we have to engage them, first of all. In, like you go to Jagannath temple, so engage them in service of Lord Jagannath. Somehow or other, whatever services are there, then slowly, if they get the right teaching or guidance, they will start enjoying it.
Okay, so it's the
And
matter
that
of
is, yeah, it's a matter of time.
Okay, yeah. Okay, thank you, Hare Krishna.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay, I guess we can stop there. You all have a safe and wonderful day. Hare Krishna. Jai
Hare
Shri Prabhupada.
Krishna, Prabhuji.